Well, toss that rusty old grill into the lake and set the Barcalandro on fire. That's what it is. Welcome to the Dadward Spiral. This is episode number 16. We've been on a 4-year hiatus. There's a new president. The planet has warmed another degree.
Oh boy.
None of this is true.
That last part is true. That last part, if although now apparently they have a cold front up in Seattle at time of recording. I don't know. It's how
the fuck is that possible? Portland. Okay, this episode, by the way, is going to go up a week after we recorded it. But right now, Portland is dealing with like record heat. We just had record heat in LA, and the world is falling apart.
And I'm 25 days out from moving to one of the most notoriously hottest places in Southern California. Yeah, but it's
a nice looking house. And
thank you, buddy.
My wife and I are extremely jealous.
Come over, kill us, take the deed. I don't know. Claim your fate. We're just going to move in. It's going to be me, my mom, my papa, and my car, and my little kids all hopped in the car. I went downtown to the Galaxy. You know what? I'm going into old school Will Smith. It's fine. That was a parents just don't understand random riff. Welcome to episode number 16. My name is Aaron Pruner. This is Eddie Doty. We do a show called Dadward Spiral. We talk about fatherhood and other shit, I guess. Mostly fatherhood.
Fatherword. Shout out to Dragon Wagon Radio for somehow still sticking with us. We have been gone for a while because life gets in the way.
Yeah. We had some guests scheduling stuff, and then you and I both were in the middle of some job transitionary stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Just feels like it's a constant. Like it's a constant tumultuous thing in my life. And that was one of the reasons why the show got put on hold, because I just couldn't find the time. Yeah. And we'll talk a bit about that a little bit later. But before we do, I don't remember what I do at this part of the show. Do we talk? Do we just catch up?
Let's get into it, because I think we have nothing planned. There's no document like we normally do. I would say though that if
you're on a lunch break and in about an hour, I gotta wake Lily up from her nap.
Exactly. And my wife is picking up my youngest from summer school. My oldest is in the other room right now, so I actually have one of my kids home with me right now, which is normally. And it's I have Millie with me, but not my boys. But I think if there's one thing that's really struck out to me, and one thing that feels of the moment that kind of thematically ties into certainly our hiatus, but also there is this larger notion of the gig economy, and you and I both living in Los Angeles and navigating that while being fathers and to degrees like providers, how we navigate that. This is something that's happening more and more in our country and indeed the world. It's interesting because I, not to bury the lead, I just accepted a new full-time position at Amazon Game Studios. You have done this a lot over the past half a year that we've even been doing this show. It's been a journey.
By the way, congratulations!
Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm a showrunner for the Prime Gaming Live channel, otherwise known as the Crown channel. That is certainly on Twitch, but also on YouTube and some of our other platforms. But it was a journey getting here. Obviously, I was with Twitch for a year prior to that, and did some time on a secret project at Bally's, and it was a journey getting here. But this is the first salaried position I think I've had in 10 years. So this is new for me. Actually, having health benefits that I don't have to pay out of pocket for. I've owned an S corp and an LLC to do my own business and to do all that stuff, and to, for the first time in a very long time, not have to worry about that stuff. I didn't realize how much of a burden it had become, was just navigating working this month on this project runs for a year or 12 months or 18 months or whatever. So therefore, I need to bank this much amount to float my healthcare until the next project kicks over. it is definitely something that I don't have to worry about. I was in first part of my career, I was in a union. I was in the Editors Guild, and that took care of some of that stuff. But again, it's like, okay, did I bank enough union hours? Did I work enough union jobs to extend my benefits another 6 months? It was just always this, and I loved being in the union. It was great. But it's like it was such a headache to try and float and navigate that stuff. And certainly I know with what's been going on with you and your work as a freelance, entertainment writer.
It's still an actor too.
Yeah, and an actor, no doubt, of course. Yeah, no, but I mean, just like in all the jobs that we both do, because I do more than one thing, you do more than one thing.
Yeah,
it's in some ways, it's this. What does being a father in our industries, our respective industries, mean versus being the sort of the death of the middle class and the death of like the 9-to-5 factory job?
It's there's multiple things here. First off, I'm going to be going on a lake trip in about a month where I'm going to be spending a week with my in-laws. And one of the things I am constantly faced with as a freelance writer is their scrutiny of how I always have to work, even on holidays or during breaks. One of the years where I was at the lake, I had to work almost the entire time from the hotel because this is the nature of this business. And my wife has sort of a similar situation where she is a dance teacher, a personal assistant, an audiobook narrator, a commercial actress, and a voiceover artist. And all of those things do not intersect until all of them suddenly do. And by intersect, I mean overlapping. And, it's been 4 years since I've had a salaried job. And the salary thing, I come from a world where, like, when I graduated high school, I was on a TV show, like, right after I graduated. And I got into the acting world. And early on, like in the 90s, I learned how to operate and navigate that by taking odd jobs at night or jobs that were flexible. And at the time, there was not a term, the gig economy, right? It was just you hustled to make it happen.
Freelancer.
And that hustle mentality, I didn't realize until I started freelancing in the career I'm in now, that it's the same thing. There's a lot of people out there who have a hard time acclimating to freelance work and freelance schedules because it's not stable. It can be feast or famine. You don't know sometimes where your next paycheck is coming from. Over the pandemic, 80% of my work fell off the map because the entertainment industry stopped, and my work is mostly founded on that, which really had me going, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this work? I had to do some pivoting. I'm currently freelancing for a company that does not at all talk about entertainment. I've been writing a 6,000 word article, which is just a directory about utilities in America, which has been a huge difference from what I'm used to. But it has also been an exercise in, okay, I don't actually have to think hard and write my opinions in a really thought-provoking manner to get clicks. That was kind of like one of those decisions where I needed to pivot to make sure I was still making money. But your move to salary, to being on a salary position after so long, kind of scares me. And I've tried to do that over the past 4 years, and I still apply to jobs that come through that I qualify for. But it's weird, man. My wife and I work a lot from home, and we work a lot on our own hours, which is great because then Lily has a lot of time with us. The flip side of that is what happens when an offer comes along.
Right.
What do we do? Like, how do I even balance that responsibility, the professional responsibility versus the personal responsibility? Because it's always weighing on my mind that she's getting way more time with her dad than I ever got with mine. And I am really creating these moments and memories and a foundation here that what's more important? Obviously having a roof over your head, but also having the time with her and being able to balance both. because my wife and I both operate that way, the amount of time that I have to work and pursue other things, especially over the past few months, has dwindled because this freelance job has taken up a lot of my time. And when I'm not doing that, I'm either cooking dinner, helping with bath time, helping with bedtime, spending time with my daughter, or supporting my wife in her work stuff, or sleeping. And, we started this show because I was like most people during the pandemic, I was in a low place and I needed to be creative and work out some of my anxieties. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to do that. What I wasn't expecting was, as soon as things started picking back up, they would just all fall, like just happen all at once. Suddenly all at once. I also, my wife is a wedding coordinator. So like suddenly she has 3 weddings in the month of September and 2 in October and 1 in November. And we're going on a lake trip, and she just had her first commercial audition. And I just auditioned for 2 different movies, which is like out of the blue for me. And I got these freelance jobs, which these are all great, but there was no easing back into it. It was just suddenly, here's everything. Now try to work out your mental and physical schedule and just go with it. And on top of all that, I was just recently diagnosed with sleep apnea because I have been just forever in my life tired all the time. And it wasn't until recently where I thought maybe I should look into this. My wife said I stopped breathing during the night. I don't want to, I don't want to have some serious condition and then suddenly there's a problem.
My friend's dad died from sleep apnea.
I have heard that it can lead to heart stuff, and
it can.
So I did a 2-night study. They sent
they give you the kit and everything. Yeah.
They sent a kit. I had to I was Iron Man for 2 nights pretty much. I had this like belt around
and now
my
you're
chest
Iron Man every night
coming out of it. And I had to have like a tube go into my nose and a thing on my finger to monitor oxygen. Worst 2 nights sleep because, I was constantly worried about tubes coming out and lights going off and the thing not reading properly. But it turns out I have sleep apnea. I have a mild case of it, which means I stop breathing roughly 5 times an hour, which is mild. But it's noticeable because I've been using this machine now for about 2 to 3 weeks. And when it's right, when I have the settings right, oh my God, dude.
It's the best. It's the best. You wake up feeling like you're born again. Like
I wake up and I'm like, I'm actually happy. Like you could tell when I've had a shitty night's sleep because I'm the worst person in the morning. But I've also had to get over my own hiccups with this because my insurance refused coverage. They said, you have sleep apnea. We're not going to cover any of the equipment. So I had to spend like $700 on a machine and a mask and figure out that the nasal mask was not right for me. And now I have to do an over the mouth mask.
I do an over the mouth as well.
It's uncomfortable.
It's not great. It's not great. I have to sleep permanently on my side.
Yeah, same here.
Because if I roll over in the middle of the night with my mask on, like this is welcome to CPAP talk, everybody. No, I think thematically, this goes back to,
I didn't even know you had it. And apparently a lot of people are undiagnosed.
I was undiagnosed for a long time. I have a bevy of like nose issues. I've had sinus reconstruction twice.
So has my wife, and she still has really bad sinus.
I had a double. I had to have a double septoplasty because I didn't just have a deviated septum. I had what was called an S-shaped septum, so it deviated in 2 spots in different directions. And so they had to go in. They had to remove a good chunk of my septum. I also had non-cancerous polyps all throughout my entire nasal passageway up into my the chenoids, or whatever they're called, the sinuses that are like on your forehead. I had them all the way up there. I could not smell until I was 31. There were occasionally they would reduce the polyps would reduce in swelling enough to where I could smell a little bit. Being by ocean water or humidity would help sometimes. But for the majority of my life, I could not smell. The day after I got my surgery, the day after I got the splints removed from my nose, I was driving on the 405 and I'm like, oh, wow, I smell asphalt, like really strong asphalt. There must be asphalt nearby. And I drove for an additional 4 miles before I caught up with the slow moving asphalt truck.
Wow.
And it was like for about 6 months there, I was Daredevil. But and then it settled back down.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Real, like, you and my wife have a lot in common there. She doesn't smell.
Yeah.
Like I'll be like, why does it smell so stinky in the apartment? There'll be like days old food in the trash, and
it would have to be a very strong odor, right? And like nowadays, I'm like, it's like leveled off to where like I'm an average, smeller, whatever that means. No, I there is this weird thing with men our age, specifically dads, and I think and you and I are both in our early mid 40s.
I just turned 45, Eddie.
Yeah, so you're
5 years away from 50.
My ex just turned 50 recently, and that's
why I just said before we started recording, I have started a moisturizing regimen on my face. I've been trying to get better sleep. I just went back to the gym for the first time yesterday.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, it's all these things start piling up where you're like, I got to take care of this. I haven't been to the dentist in a while. I got teeth problems. I got to go.
I have teeth.
It's and that's based on years and years of brushing my teeth wrong, because my mom taught me to furiously brush my teeth. So in my mind, I had to brush really hard to get the food off until
you're destroying your
brushed
enamel.
all the enamel off.
Yeah.
And that's how.
No,
I don't
I hear
smile
you
really big because I don't want to show off the damage, but these are the things. And so it starts piling on. You got those things going on. You got professional things going on. I like to talk a lot about on the show about being there for your kids. And then it's like, okay, well, I either really figure out how to schedule the podcast or I spend time with my daughter. And it was like,
it's a tough balance.
Suddenly you got to like think about what is the most important thing. Why am I doing this show? I'm doing this show to understand fatherhood and to understand my own issues, to be a better dad for her. But then I'm doing the show instead of being there for her. You know what I mean? So like, it's been a juggle, and we had some guests lined up that fell through, and I don't have the bandwidth currently to be the publicist for the show and find guests on a regular basis. So things sort of were put on pause, and I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. Quite honestly.
It's a little bit better. Okay. How do I have to tread carefully here? The tying this back into our kind of like our back-ended sort of central theme. Going back to something you said earlier about like, why did I sort of take a full-time? And what was,
I completely understand why you did that. You have a house.
Well, yes. And by the way, mortgage underwriters don't really like it if you have mixed 1099 and W-2 income. That becomes a bit of a problem, as I discovered. But beyond that, more than that, I've entertained W-2 jobs before and full-time salaried stuff. I actually, at the end of 2019, briefly took one for 3 months, and I was at a company I won't name. And I took it because I was kind of I was open to the idea of doing a full-time. I was kind of like done with the contracting dance. And then I took it.
What does the contracting dance look like? Is it a lot of arms and legs?
Yes, it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of like, cool, I've enjoyed this job for 3 months. Now I got to start thinking about what happens in 3 months when it wraps, or
I understand.
So I took it at a company because I liked some of the people there. And about 3 weeks there, I'm like, oh, this is not for me. But I just started and I wanted to give it a try. But then I was starting to have my conversations with Twitch. And actually, Twitch flew me up to San Francisco to interview. And they came back and said, we're going to do it, but we need to wait until the next fiscal year in February. To do it. So just hang tight. And I'm like, great. So I'll just hang tight on this job. And I ended up getting laid off at the other place. And it was good and bad. Like, it was like, I was grateful to be done with that place, but it was frustrating. It was frustrating to like maybe have like a glimpse of something long-term. Twitch was fantastic. I was in a year-long contract. When that ended, I said, listen, I want to be salaried here. And they said, the project you're on is sunsetting, but we're going to see what we can do. And that was when I was referred to this current role. And for me, it had to be a mix of both something I legitimately wanted to do and provide that stability and security. And I understand that most people do not have the luxury of choosing one, of getting both. It's for most people, it's one or the other. And so I'm very grateful in that regard. But for me, it's like, if I'm not able to do for the longest time, it's like, okay, I got to do something I feel comfortable doing. And if that means freelance and contractor, then so be it, especially as a TV editor where you're working on like seasons.
Right.
There's very few permanently staffed editors. So for the first half of my career,
that's sort of the same in my realm of entertainment journalism. Just in general, after the pandemic, more and more people are going freelance.
Exactly. But something interesting happened that ties into what you were saying earlier, which is once I got, because sometimes you pay for the best insurance you can afford. And sometimes, so even when I was at Twitch, it was a year-long contractor, but I was paid as a W-2, which means I had like access to some benefits, not the full Amazon benefit package, but some. And I had okay health insurance. It was fine. But
what's that like?
It was okay. It was fine. But like now that I have like up until now, the best insurance I ever had was through my union. But now that I'm on health insurance that is as good, if not better than that, and I have all these things I can do now, it's like, oh my God, I can finally go get this checked out. And I can finally get that checked out.
Right. Can I just say something here?
Yeah, please.
The last salary job I had, I worked at MTV for 7 years.
Right.
I did not apply to work at MTV. I was at an internet startup back in 2007 after leaving MySpace. That their big thing was, instead of having a platform where you can create profiles, their big thing was allowing you to create your own profile and take it with you to different platforms. This was before social media became what it is now. And we monitored big artist pages for people like the Jackass team and Soulja Boy and like all these people back in 2007, 2008, when that was huge. MTV bought us, and I got the best insurance I had ever had in my life. Kelly still talks about how great my insurance was at MTV. And I feel like I'm chasing that dragon, although doing freelance work, good luck. Right now I'm with Kaiser through Covered California.
I was with Kaiser for a long time. We had all three of our kids at Kaiser.
Some of the worst insurance I've had, but because it was affordable with what we signed up for.
I had good experiences there. But again, that's
right.
For childbirth, I think it's a really good, for at least the hospital where I was at was a really good spot. So I think we lucked out in that regard.
Yeah. When you think about this now, last night I was talking to Kelly. I saw a job ad. I'm like, should I apply for that? And she's like, well, that's your choice. I said, it's not though. It's not just, I'm not just operating off of how I would normally apply for a job anymore, because it's not just about me. You're talking about medical insurance. Suddenly that means your family's covered. Right. And so if I was to move out of this situation where I work like 30 hours a week on my own time for one job, and as long as I have an assignment submitted by a specific day, I can work whenever for that job, so I can space out my time and still be there for everyone that needs me throughout the day, to something that is a full-time salaried 40-hour a week commitment. There has to be more to it than just it pays nicely.
Yes.
Because I remember what it was like growing up with limited healthcare and certain resources that we didn't have in that time in my life. And I don't want to put my daughter through that, and more and more, it's just, I'm aware of, yes, working freelance is great. I can work on my own time. I can set my own hours. I can, in some situations, negotiate pay. And I love doing what I do, but the stability factor is more and more important when thinking about stability in your family and stability on an emotional and physical level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. it's funny because there's two sort of like, and I would classify them both as like development, right? Like what for me, having good hours and good benefits means like, okay, I can develop my time at home. I can develop a better work-life balance. I can develop a better routine that benefits not just myself, but my entire family. The other half of this, though, is I want to get better at the thing that my profession. I want to get better at what I'm doing at. And for me, a big part of this of my recent decision was the last 2 years, I would say. I was even going back to like 2017 when I was over at a startup called Mammoth Media. I was brought in to be like the production guy, the content guy, the streaming guy, which is great, except I'm nowhere near done learning or growing or getting better. And for me, I need to be better by not just being the only guy in the room who can kind of do what I do. And that was what was essentially happening, even at Twitch. In my team, in my position, I was brought in for my point of view, but I didn't really get to interface with others who were like me. And a big part of my current job was like, I needed it's the iron sharpens iron mentality. Like if you're around other people working collaboratively and you present your stuff and their stuff is like as good, but like different and like stronger in ways that you're not. And then you have good leadership that is like, that you can learn and draw from. Like that's what I was really, really missing. And I had feared becoming stagnant. I saw this a lot in my editorial career. I saw a lot of really good editors stop growing and then they hit 55 and then they just don't get work anymore because they're the same and they're dependable. But then it's like, okay, you're 55 and you're like a B+ editor. And there's 32-year-olds who are B+ editors and
who will work for cheaper. Yeah.
Maybe not even that, but have a younger, fresher, more relevant viewpoint than you do. And
I'm starting to feel that way in my line of work, dude.
Yeah. Like that. And for me, it's like, okay, I need to get better and evolve. And I need to, I'm working with right now, like stuff I'm doing, I'm working on XR stages. Right. Like that's,
I don't know what that means.
If you've watched The Mandalorian, where like, if you watch The Mandalorian and you watch like how they shot that on this thing called The Volume, it's it's essentially rebuilt. It's like redesigning the idea of a green screen or a backplate. It's a dynamic backplate. So the idea is that it's a fully rendered. So like when they shoot on The Mandalorian, there's like sand and rocks and stuff, but the background is all video. It's the Unreal Engine that they composite the backgrounds and then it's tied in with camera sync so that when the camera moves, the background shifts accordingly, like you would get real parallax on an actual camera. So I'm getting to work on these for 2 of the shows I'm working on, and I've never worked on an XR before. And that's like, yes, that's what I need to be doing. I'm 43. You know, if my answer is to just build a practical set as opposed to leaning into the available technology, then I'm going to become old and stagnant and irrelevant and obscure and not, you know, and so like for me, that was the biggest appeal of this. All of the other stuff aside was obviously needs to be able to support my family, obviously needs to be able to provide benefits. But for me, that was like the biggest part of it. I think like, and the fact that the hours are decent, I feel like this is kind of what I've been building towards for the last 5 years. Like this is where
that's
I've
awesome,
been wanting.
Man. Congratulations. I mean, but also in line with that, there are priorities. And then it's like, where do we fit this show in? Because we record in the middle of the day during a work week, which makes it difficult sometimes for guests to come on. And honestly, I'm going to be honest here. What, a month or 2 ago, whenever the heck I was like, I need to put a pause on this, I didn't care about the show because I had so much going on that this show did not mean the same to me as it did a year ago. That's
a completely fair position to have. And I had my own version of that because I was stressing out about so many things. Right. And it's like, how am I supposed to, you know, and it's like, I cared, but like I didn't I didn't feel like I could get up to the moment. I didn't feel like I could meet the moment. Right. I didn't feel like I could give anywhere near my best to the show. Because of everything else that was going on with me. And, like there's only so much of us individually to go around. And when we're not able to meet the moment, then it's like, I'd rather just not do it,
Yeah, I agree, because it would be a shitty episode. And I mean, it got to a point where my birthday was the day after Father's Day, and my wife she really had to talk me into doing something. I didn't want to do anything because the idea of making a decision of what to do, where to go, who to invite, simple things stressed me out. I'm like, someone else needs to make this decision for me. Plan it, invite people, tell me where to be, and I'll be there. I had so much going on. I have never been really in a place in my life where such a decision that would be self-serving to me, because it would be celebrating me, was freaking me out. I was so stressed out about it. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to be in bed all day. And I feel like this show, in a way, is self-serving to me. I came up with the idea, and it was about me trying to figure this out and be a better dad while also exploring this topic. And then when you came in, it became a whole other profound thing. And I really thank you for being a part of it. But at the end of the day, this is inspired by a lot of personal stuff I went through, personal stuff you went through. So it speaks to me on a personal level. I had no space for it. And it really made me feel like I was letting listeners down and letting you down, and just letting the idea of fatherhood down, where I had to take a back seat and be like, I'm doing it on a daily basis here in real time. Like, I don't need a show to validate that.
I remember you kept apologizing, like you had something to apologize for. And I was just like, you were apologizing to me directly. I'm like, you don't owe me an apology. Like it's this show has always existed in the crevices of, wherever
my
else.
Butt.
Yeah. No, but it's like existed where we can fit it in.
Hold on. Can I just explain? This is going to be a side note.
Sure.
The other day, Lily asked what a crack was.
Oh boy.
And so we tried showing her pictures of cracks, and, on phones, like cracks in cement, cracks in walls. And then just on a side note, I'm like, and you have a crack in your butt. and I was like, all people. And, that's called a crack. And she was like, I don't want my butt to be cracked. I don't want a crack in my butt. And it was like a whole thing where I was trying to make her understand. And then it turned into this thing where she thought her butt was going to break in half.
Right. Patton Oswalt has a bit that is about like his daughter, when his daughter was much younger, like the whole Schoolhouse Rocks, like, dem bones, and like my skeleton's gonna jump out of my body. Like, I just did not see that coming.
Yeah, it's stuff, but it's moments like that where I find it funny, and then I'm like, if I was too focused on work and too unavailable, I would not be able to experience that.
Exactly.
And so that's, I guess, what it comes down to for me is you got to practice what you preach. And if we're preaching to be good fathers on the show and the struggles of it and all of that, got to do that in real life too. So I came to that conclusion, and I have just basically been like, when we can do the show, I'd like to do it. But I got so hung up on it has to be weekly. We have to be on a schedule. We have to have all these amazing guests. And it sent me on this little downward spiral, so to speak, of I am letting everyone down because I don't have the energy to do any of that.
But that's not, I hope now we've both come to this realization, or this position at least, where that's not the case. We shouldn't hold ourselves to an impossible standard. We are not getting paid for this, believe it or not. One day we would like to. No, but like one day we would like to, and sponsorships and all that other stuff. But like, I think we're doing this, it ultimately boils down to, why are we doing this? We're doing this because for me, at least, like, nobody was doing this when I became a father. There are some dad podcasts out there now. I know Freddie Wong has like a D&D podcast that's like D&D, but with other dads. That's apparently they've got $30,000 on their Twitter account. I haven't listened to it yet, but like I'm sure it's great and I'm sure it offers something, but I also feel like we offer something. And I feel like the conversations we have with our guests definitely offer something. I feel like we have an opportunity to, if for no other reason, it helps me. It definitely helps me,
helps me too.
Yeah. I mean, so like, we're going to keep doing this. Is it going to be every week?
No,
no,
probably not. But you know what? This was going to be a memoir before it turned into a podcast. Yes. And I feel like I'm getting to a place now where I'm going to start writing that book. Because you know what? You said something earlier where you're like, I'm getting older and I don't want to be stagnant at a certain point. Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about that over the past few years. I write about TV and movies. I'm a 45-year-old man. I'm white. And I fall under this category that is not age-wise, demographic-wise, like culturally speaking, I am not what the internet wants to gauge certain opinions about entertainment pieces from anymore, and that's fine. The internet is a young place, and I've been pitching to places where I've realized they're not only not fitting what I want to write about, they're not paying what I need to get paid because they're focusing on a younger crowd and with younger writers who are less experienced. And that just goes with the business, especially since it has become very web-based. There are journalists out there who are seasoned, but that's not really the makeup of my reality anymore. And I've been thinking a lot recently about how do I move forward? How do I progress? How do I pivot in a way that is both beneficial to me artistically and practically to be able to support my family and also get us the heck out of this crappy apartment. And I keep going back to writing that book, not to make money, but just to get it out of my head.
Yeah.
And I've been running from it because there's a lot of stuff we talked about on this show that only cracks the surface of stuff that I'm afraid of putting down on paper. But you can't really progress in life if you don't get yourself out of your comfort zones and risk and explore that risk and explore the gross places that you don't want to explore. And so that's been on my mind a lot recently, just from a creative standpoint regarding this show, because this came from a different idea. Yeah. And this has become its own entity, but still speaks to that thing that I keep running from. So that might be a thing I do, but from a salary perspective, man, I'm envious of your situation, but at the same time, I don't know if I would be able to function because, as I was saying earlier, I've always operated best in chaos when it comes to not knowing where the next paycheck comes from.
Some people do. Yeah. For a long time. I
didn't know until my last salary job and then the previous contract position I had at Entertainment Tonight. Yeah. Hated both of those experiences. And I didn't really feel like I was in the zone until I was back doing what I do now, dictating my own hours and having that level of uncertainty of where the next check is coming from, which I don't think is necessarily healthy.
No.
And trying to find a balance there between work and home life and just my own mental well-being is already a lot of work. And then being able to pursue creative endeavors makes me feel like if I'm doing that on top of things, that I'm being self-serving and not having myself open and available enough to my wife or my daughter. And then I have that guilt, and that guilt is constantly there, which is constantly reminding me of my own father issues because my dad was never there. And I don't want to put my wife in the position my mom was put in when I was a kid raising me. And it's a self-serving, not self-serving. It's like an Ouroboros thing where it constantly circles around in my head. I come to a conclusion. My wife assures me I'm fine. And then it happens again. Like tonight, I'm supposed to go to a press event, an in-person press event. And she reminds me, this is work. And then I'm like, sure, but there's going to be drinks there. And as soon as there's drinks at a situation, it becomes a social gathering that I am choosing to do instead of addressing my obligations at home. And that really blows up in my head when thinking about work and progress and what sort of professional progress I would hope to achieve in the coming years to be able to supply my daughter a decent education and a healthy childhood and not put her in a position like what I was in when I was growing up, around gangs and being bullied all the time. And I feel like I might have gone on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think I know where you're going. I think you know where I'm going with this. Like,
I do. I mean, it's it's very, the bottom line is this: you need to do things for yourself to take care of your own physical and mental health.
So I got a CPAP machine.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do things for your own physical and mental health so that when you are around your family, you are the best version for yourself. There is that. Okay.
Right.
Now,
yes,
that is a very real, 100% real and valid thing. And it is necessary. And not enough men do that. They don't engage in behavior that is truly taking care of themselves. This means everything from, taking a half day for themselves every once in a while to also seeing a therapist. It's everything in between. A lot of times men will index really hard one way or the other and say, I need to get out of the house and have a drink with the guys to blow off some steam so that I'm not a monster when I come home. Okay, sure, fine. How often are you going to be doing that? And where is the tipping point between dad's doing what he's got to do for himself and dad's simply not here? And that line is going to be different for everybody. And sometimes for some men, a little bit at their best is better than more of them suboptimal. For some men, that is the case. My grandfather, so again, getting super personal here. I recently was at 43 diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum. And I am of the opinion that my grandfather was too. My grandfather he grew up in rural Kentucky in the mountains with a dirt floor in his home. Stopped his formal education at like 6th grade, I want to say. Joined the Army at 17. Did not talk very much. Did not talk and had a very thick accent / mumble that made him unintelligible to most people. And for him, it was very hard to be around him and to, understand where he was and what he was feeling. But when he was in a good, happy mood and things were good with him, he was really pleasant. And I think he understood that about himself. And so he didn't interject himself into very many scenarios. Sorry, they're doing construction outside. They're doing construction outside the house.
What was that?
They're doing construction outside here. We may have to deal with that a little bit. So all that is to say that, for some men, it's going to be less. It's going to be less hours overall.
Welcome to Downward Spiral with Einstein Noe Boughton. Only some specific people will know that reference.
We're nearing the end, but my overall point is this: there are for some folks, men just need to be better at being honest with themselves and about what it is they need. I have to be told a lot of times. And it took an honest conversation with my doctor for my doctor to be like, you need to prioritize exercise daily. Or you are going to die, dude. Like, you've got the genetics, like you've got like everything working against your favor. You don't look obese, but you absolutely are. And you have really bad cholesterol and all this other stuff. And it took that for me to prioritize going to the gym 6 days a week. I go to the gym 6 days a week now, and I intermittent fast, and I'm still trying to lose weight because I'm still, me at my worst, I didn't look that bad. You can probably attest to that. But for me, and considering where, my family's history of heart disease is and everything that went down with my dad, like it absolutely needed to be prioritized. So that means sometimes I'm going to miss some stuff with my kids.
You're talking about really important stuff, and it sounds like your room is farting.
Yeah, I know. It's they're drilling the carport like directly underneath. Yeah, okay. So,
but yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and you make a great point. In the sorry, continue.
To cap it off, just like you going to a press event and having drinks afterwards, you know as well as I do that oftentimes the next gig you get is going to be based off those conversations. You know that you could have a really good conversation with somebody over, just when you and I were, for instance, like when you and I were at a Comic-Con and we were at that, and you met my wife at that National Geographic party. And we have those
going to a Nat Geo party tonight. That's what it is.
Well, yeah. if they give you more Gordon Ramsay Uncharted metal tin tumblers, yeah, but no, for real, a lot of things just happened there, right? And I know I'm going to PAX, and I'm going to go to PAX with the full understanding that there's going to be, and I'm going to be gone from my family for 5 days, and it's going to be a lot of really intense work with my team, but then there's also going to be parties and stuff. And frankly, deals get made there, and I could very easily beat myself over that shit. Or I can be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this thing. But when I get back, I'm taking 2 days off, and it's not just going to be like theme parks and movies. It's going to be story time and conversation and walks and just making the most impact in those moments.
Yeah, no, yes. And it's just a constant reminder to me that just because I'm going out and there's going to be alcohol or friends or whatever, I'm not my father skirting responsibilities who never showed up to the hospital when I was born. Yeah, stuff like that. Speaking of, we're going to be ending the show soon, but I forgot to tell you, an alleged half brother of mine who lives in Nashville, Tennessee, who is 56 years old, who was put up for adoption, did some genetics research and found out my father was his birth father.
Oh, boy.
Which meant that my father had him a decade before he had me, and him and the woman he was involved with put this baby up for adoption in the 60s. This guy found me and wants to talk. He's in his late 50s, works in country music in Nashville, Tennessee. And there's parts of that where I'm like, he wants answers, right? He wants to understand better where he comes from, where I've already gone through that. And there's a part of me who feels obligated to talk to him. And there's another part of me who feels like I don't want that in my life. Does that make sense? Because that sort of opens up a door to conversations and thoughts and feelings about my dad that I want to put to rest. But at the same time, this guy who is a decade older than me doesn't have those answers. And I remember when my dad died being like, well, certain questions I have will never be answered. And we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And I'm currently like, crap, this guy there is a very good chance this guy comes from a completely different ideology and lifestyle than what I'm used to. I've heard his voice. He left me a voicemail, very Southern accent. You could tell from how he's talked to me that God plays an important role in his life, religion. He has his own family, all of this stuff, country music. Those aren't negatives in my perspective, but my reality and my lifestyle and just who I am, my identity does not line up with that. So there's this concern in my head of if we talk, it would be real uncomfortable. But there's also, if he's looking to me for answers, I don't know what sort of answers I can give him because my dad wasn't in my life either. But it has brought these, I think that's a part of the reason why I've been so aware recently of my behavior and being invited to do extracurricular things away from my family and how guilty that makes me feel.
I hear that. Last point first, I still struggle, a buddy of mine invited me over to his house for a 10-hour board game session of this board game.
Whoa.
It's one game. It's a very legendary board game called Twilight Imperium. He and I produce.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, it's the granddaddy of long form board games, and he's a former colleague of mine, good buddy, been mean. We haven't seen each other in years, literal years. And so I felt bad even asking. I felt bad. Like he hit me up and I'm like, I can't agree to that without talking to my wife first, because that would require a non-insignificant amount of coordination. And I feel bad asking. And like, I went and I asked, and I put a million like asterisks around it. And my wife was like, if you're asking, you clearly need it. So yes, of course, go. Like
that's interesting. If you're asking, you clearly need it. I've never viewed it that way. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it made a good point. It's because like, if I felt like, if I didn't want to do that, I mean, it's a 12-hour board game. If I didn't need that experience,
you just jump from 10 to 12. Well, how long was it?
It honestly depends. Like I've seen that when you do it with 6 players, it could be like 9 hours. It could be 13. I actually produced it for Tabletop Day one year, and we had a side table of TI3 going, and it was, I think they finished in like 9.5 hours. But like, point being is that, I asked, it wasn't just me saying like, oh man, that's not a good idea for X, Y, and Z. The fact is I still asked. And when she said
that's how I do everything. When it's involving my life outside of the house here, I always ask. And it comes off, I think sometimes as if I'm lacking confidence as just a man outside of being a dad.
I think it's also like my wife has to, and part of the reason why I ask is because, my wife teaches dance, and yes, your wife does too. And it's, like in competition season, which is now like,
oh yeah, we're in recital season.
Recital season is a big thing. So that means that like there's 12-hour days with just you and Lily. Yeah. And for me, there's 12-hour days and 13-hour days where it's just me and all 3 kids. And
that's insane.
It is. And so, and because of that, it's like part of me is like, well, I don't want to put her through that. On the other hand, it's like, well, I do that for her too. So, but it's like, I never want to assume, because like right now, like she's dealing with a bad neck. I'm dealing with a weird issue in my left foot that I'm still like, that makes it hard for me to like walk around for like a long period of time. And I don't want to assume, I don't want to put things on her. I don't want to assume that's just going to be easy for her. She doesn't make the same assumption with me. But, but when I asked that, she's like, yeah, I'll make it. She's like, it'll suck, but I'll make it work. Like, she's like, you do that for me. And, it's, don't do it every weekend, so.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I feel like there's a sense of pride. There's an innate sense of pride that comes, I think, just inherent to a lot of men of just, I can deal with this without asking for help.
Oh my God.
Deal with this and suck it up, Or the flip side of that is, and I want to talk about this briefly before we go, is the idea that, well, it's not the man's job, so the woman can handle it. And we've talked about that too, which is going to lead me. I want to just pivot to a final thing. We usually talk about entertainment stuff. I want to talk about 2 things.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Fast and Furious 9. And I want to talk about the new Kevin Hart movie, Fatherhood. Because I've seen both of them. They kind of bookended my past few days. The reason I want to talk about Fast and Furious 9 first is throughout this entire franchise, they talk about how family is the most important thing. And Eddie has not seen one Fast and Furious movie. So I'm about to spoil some shit, possibly.
Please do.
The newest movie, there's a father storyline in it that introduces John Cena as Vin Diesel's character's long lost brother, which already, wow. But the father storyline you're introduced to in this movie gives a lot of context to previous films in the franchise. Long story short, Dom's dad was a race car driver who died at a young age. And that death impacted the brothers in a way that put a wedge in between them and a rivalry, and they hate each other, yada, yada. Also, Dom is now a father to a little boy who's probably 3 years old in the movie. And you're introduced to this new life that he's living in this like secluded town in like South America or something, with him and Letty and this little boy. And you're like, how sweet. He has left his old life behind and now he's there being a dad. Well, 5 minutes into the movie, his old buddies show up and say, we got to go save the world because this device was stolen and we got to go fight crime. And Dom's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then 2 minutes later, he's doing it. And it goes from him being a dad with his kid to pretty much never seeing the kid again until the last 5 minutes of the movie. And the next scene after this household life, this dad life, he's got a fucking shotgun and he's driving a muscle car into like militia territory and just head straight into gunfire wearing a pristine white V-neck shirt, holding a shotgun. I see this as a dad. The first thing I think is, fuck you. You are the worst dad in the world.
Yep.
Because if you are trying to pursue a life where you want to put family first and you want to take care of that little boy, then if you really have to go into a war zone, you're going to go in head to toe, body armor, Kevlar, put yourself in as safe a position as possible so that little boy doesn't lose his dad the way you did when you were a kid.
Yep.
And so that immediately painted my vision of this movie in a way like, why even throw that in there? Because it's so goddamn hypocritical now, where the entire franchise is based on how important family is. You are introduced to the storyline that Dom lost his dad and how that negatively impacted his life. But now he has a little boy named after, who's the actor? Paul Walker's character, Paul Walker, who died. So there's like layers to this already. And and there's a part of the story where it's introduced that little Brian is being taken care of by Big Brian, the character that Paul Walker played, just somewhere else. So Brian's looking after Brian and he's fine. There is a portion later in the movie where Vin Diesel's character says to, his significant other, before diving into a suicidal maelstrom that's pretty much just going to kill him, tell him I'll always be in his heart. Basically, I'm going to kill myself now. Tell my son I love him, before diving into this just chaos of like all these men and guns. And then there's water and he's almost drowning and everything. His life flashes before his eyes. And I'm like, you love your son so much and family comes first. What the fuck are you doing? Every scene he's in, he is diving into something where it's like, well, that would just kill a normal person. Well, you're not at all thinking about the family unit, the life you've created at home, because you're constantly going after this action-filled adventure where you're putting your life on the line at every moment. And it pissed me off. It was so hypocritical and I was so angry. And it came out of that movie thinking, well, Dom is a horrible dad. And this movie is pretty much destroying the foundation, the emotional foundation that the franchise is supposed to be based off of, which is family. So I watched that. And then yesterday I came across this movie called Fatherhood on Netflix, starring Kevin Hart. And I'm like, oh God, what is this? And it turns out it's based on a true story of a man who is married to a woman. They have a kid, and the woman, after the kid's born, dies of a pulmonary embolism, leaving the man with a newborn baby, which is a reminder of his wife who died.
Yep.
And his mother-in-law and his mother and his support group trying to help him be a dad. And with everything stacked against him, he says, I'm going to make it work and be a father. And it's going to be fucking tough, but I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to offer everything I can to this girl. And now my life is going to be about how can I best serve her? It's not about me anymore. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right, Vin Diesel. And I went into this movie not knowing what to expect, and it punched me right in the gut. Like there's moments in it where Kevin Hart's character is with his baby girl and she's in the stroller, and there's like a montage where women are walking by going, oh, where's the mom? And, he's like, oh, she's an astronaut. She's currently on a mission for NASA, or like she's in jail, sent on a 7-year sentence for whatever, where I'm like, yeah, you see a dad out with the stroller. We've already talked about this. It's like, oh, where's mommy? Oh, look at you doing the hard work, blah, 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 blah. They address that in a really interesting, funny way, but they don't fully linger there. But the whole duration of the movie, we started recording right when I was finishing watching it on my computer. And God damn it, there is a scene in that film where he is offered a career path that is super lucrative, everything he would have wanted before having a kid. And he takes it, but then starts thinking about all of the moments he has shared with his daughter and all the moments he's going to miss. And you signed into Zoom right when I was getting to the point where he left his career behind to go be with his daughter, and was almost crying. And you showed up. That might be why my eyes look the way they do. But
it's fair.
I was completely surprised by this film, the way that they tackle the subject matter. Yeah. Kevin Hart is not doing the Kevin Hart shtick. He's like being real in it. He cries believably. Like he pretty much pulls some solid acting chops in it. And the fact that it's based on a true story, I was like, this resonates so much with me. And more dads, I think, they're looking for some sort of solidarity, being in a position where you are taking the responsibility to raise your kid. Watch this movie because it's pretty well done. And I'm a white guy, and I don't think I have the right. I don't have like a stance to really say this, but I'm going to say a lot of times in media, you don't see positive African-American men in father roles on TV. Should I be saying black men, African-American? But you people of color, you don't see, and I think that's changing. You saw it in Invisible Man, the Blumhouse remake.
Yes.
Aldous Hodge was a fantastic father in that movie. And it was like, why aren't more people talking about that? Well, you get it again here. And I feel like depictions of positive father role models in television and in movies is important, especially to reflect people of different skin colors and different walks of life and different genders, that whole parenting perspective. And so I really was surprised by this movie, and I highly recommend you watch it when you have a chance.
I will watch it today. I will watch it tonight after work. So
yeah. All right. Let me know what you think.
I will.
Let me know if you cry.
Probably. It's pretty easy to get me to cry. Like there's a Steven Universe song called Dear Old Dad. I can't make it halfway through that song without it fucking just completely fucking me up. Let's see. Do I have any recommendations this week? I think I do. Millie, I accidentally had the Lonely Islands unauthorized Bash Brothers experience on Netflix in the background the other day. And Millie loved dancing to that. So if as long as your kid doesn't understand the lyrics, there's that. Oh, I do have something actually. And this is less a specific thing. It's more just like this notion that I encourage not just other dads, but other people to do. But I think especially dads, especially middle-aged dads, because, I think there's the old concept of like the midlife crisis of like the guy gets an earring and buys a Corvette because he's going through a midlife crisis. I don't think that's happening.
That's my thing. I want a truck.
I think what we're seeing nowadays with like Gen X and elder millennial dads like us is hobbies.
I'm Gen
obscure. I'm Gen X as well. Just chill.
You said elder millennial, and that is just a term I don't want to use.
I'm speaking to like 35
right.
35 year olds.
Got it. Yeah.
But there's a notion, I think now, especially with social media, that like if you pick up a hobby, it must be performative. You must post about it. You must be good at it. And it must be obscure. And I want to push back against that. For Father's Day this year, I always do the same thing every year for Father's Day, structure-wise, which is I take the first half of the day for myself because I am around my kids a lot. And on weekends, especially because my wife works a lot, there just isn't time for myself at all. But also, all the time, as in my time as a father, I don't get a lot of chance to reflect upon my father. So I take that first half of the day for myself to kind of think about my dad, and think about who he was and how that affects who I am. And I like that moment of just like quiet reflection where I do an activity by myself just to kind of focus in and think about it. For me this year, and it's not always this every year, but I'd say about half the times I do this. I took my board down to Doheny, and which is a beach about an hour and a half south of here.
I saw you post about
some post about that. And I went bodyboarding, and I like every time when I go bodyboarding, I get wrecked. I catch a few waves and then I just get hammered. And that's okay. I've been bodyboarding for 25 years, I'd say, like maybe longer. I was 10, so 30 years. I've been bodyboarding since 10 years old. I'm okay at it. I'm better than like a person who is.
You're better than me.
Better than you. Better than other folks.
Never been.
But I'm not great at it. I can't do Rolos. I can't do like any tricks or any shit like that.
Don't know what that means. I'm assuming it's like you spin or something.
That's a flat spin, but like a Rolo is if you're in the curl.
A Rolo is you grab your Viking shield and your sword.
You go upside down
on a raid with
you
Ragnar.
Do like you basically you ride the face of the wave until you flip upside down like you're doing a barrel.
I was making a Vikings joke.
I've never watched Vikings.
My God, man.
I know. I just started watching Outlander with my wife. But
different.
very different.
The same.
Not the same at all.
No.
But my point being, the point of all this is it's okay to enjoy something you're not great at. It's okay to enjoy something and do it and not feel like you have to be an expert. And it's okay to have things that you love that you will just ever be okay at, especially for men in your middle age.
The overlying theme of this episode is it's okay to enjoy stuff and have time to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly,
as
like
a parent,
a big thing we talk about on this podcast a lot is like our kids are always learning from us by our demonstrated behavior. And when we don't think they're watching us, they absolutely are. And when they see us doing the things that make us, that's how they emulate or pivot off of for their own behavior. I want my kids to know that they should do things to love it, and it doesn't matter, and they shouldn't compare themselves to anybody else. And that is increasingly hard to do in a society that is heavily socialized, where social media, where it's like, wow, this person you kind of barely sort of know is an expert at this obscure thing, and they make it look easy. And all of your friends in social circles have these insane talents that they are putting forward and putting in your face. And it's very easy to feel like, oh, well, I'm just fucking mediocre. And that's okay to just be okay at stuff. And what matters most is, what are you getting out of that practice or that service? And what position does it play in your life, and what do you want your kids to take away from that? Like that's okay. My kids see me coming. You know what my kids saw? They didn't see me eat shit on waves. They saw me coming back to the house with my wetsuit down, my board in hand, and a big ass smile on my face. That's what they saw.
Point Break Dad coming back.
They saw me be happy in a way that few other things can make me happy. You know what I mean?
And
so
you know what? We're gonna tie this up because I know you got to go and I got to go too. But your kids seeing you happy is a big deal.
Huge.
And I have found that now that I have the CPAP machine and I'm working on the sleep apnea, I'm happier. I didn't know. I just didn't know. I tend to be a grumpy person, and getting your rest, whether it's mental or physical, Jesus Christ, the rewards you reap from the simple things that you don't think about end up paying off in ways that you may not be aware of until you hear some sort of reaction or get some sort of response from your daughter or your son, your wife, whomever. My mom, who I have a difficult relationship with at times. So I guess our overlying theme here is take care of yourself. And if that means that you got to put a project or two on hold to be able to make it through and be okay, then don't feel guilty.
Yeah. Give yourself a break.
And I feel like we should have, just from this point on, some sort of sound effect, like a drill fart noise that I could just put into the episodes that we do from now on, just to remind us of the construction happening in your
home. Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. I'm trying to be funny. This has been episode number 16 of Dadward Spiral. There are people I want to have come on the show. Eric Bauza was supposed to come on. He's the new voice of Daffy Duck, Marvin the Martian, Fozzie Bear, and Bugs Bunny. He was just nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award. He's in Space Jam with LeBron James. He's busy. There are other people whose names you would recognize that I don't want to necessarily mention because I don't have them locked down yet. But these are things that I still want to work on. Hopefully we'll make them happen. I can't guarantee you that this is going to be a weekly episodic show, but we're still here and we're still doing this.
Still here.
Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again to Dragon Wagon Radio. One of these days we'll actually record a commercial for our show.
I have a good mic now. Now's the time. I finally got a good mic.
Now's the time. All right.
I sound like a robot, like in every other video or podcast we did.
Yeah. Thanks for sticking with us through this hour and 20-minute long episode. And I hope you get something out of listening to us talk, because I get something out of it. I know Eddie does.
Absolutely.
And until the next episode we record, the next time we speak, be excellent to each other. Thank you.
In the mid-1960s, the world's smartest TV producers brought together 4 young musicians to create a TV show that was years ahead of its time. I'm talking, of course, about the Monkees. And you, comedy, music, pop culture nerd, probably love the show, but don't realize it. That's why I, Monkees superfan Takuro McCullough, sit down with a variety of guests to watch every Monkees episode and discuss their glory on the Monkees podcast. Whether you're already a fan or have never seen an episode, the Monkees podcast is for you, as we discuss the Monkees phenomenon, hilarious antics, and deep fandom. So check it out at monkeyspodcast.com. That's PAWDCAST, or wherever podcasts are found.
It's Dragon Wagon.